The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling railway station as Sarah Mitchell adjusted the worn leather strap of her messenger bag. At 28, she had learned to move through crowds with the practiced ease of someone who preferred to remain unnoticed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the kind of unremarkable clothes that helped her blend seamlessly with the stream of commuters boarding the 7:15 train to Washington, D.C. Sarah's eyes swept the platform with the unconscious vigilance that had become second nature during her 5 years as an undercover federal agent. Even on what was supposed to be a routine assignment, old habits died hard. She was traveling under the identity of a freelance journalist, complete with a carefully crafted backstory and documentation that would pass even close scrutiny. Her real mission was far more complex than the innocent cover story suggested. For the past 18 months, Sarah had been tracking a sophisticated smuggling operation that used civilian transportation networks to move sensitive military equipment across state lines. The investigation had led her through a labyrinth of shell companies, corrupt officials, and carefully orchestrated logistics that suggested the involvement of someone with intimate knowledge of military protocols. Today's train journey was the culmination of months of painstaking surveillance and intelligence gathering. As she found her assigned seat in Car 3, Sarah noticed the diverse mix of passengers settling in for the 6-hour journey. There were business travelers typing furiously on laptops, families with excited children heading to the capital for vacation, and a handful of military personnel in various uniforms who were likely traveling on official business or returning from leave. The normalcy of the scene was exactly what made it perfect for the kind of operation she was investigating. 3 rows ahead of her sat a man in his mid-30s wearing the dress blue uniform of a Marine captain. Even seated, his bearing was unmistakably military, back straight, shoulders square, alert eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his surroundings. His uniform was immaculate, ribbons and insignia precisely placed according to regulation. Sarah's trained eye noted the combat action ribbon among his decorations, indicating this was someone with actual combat experience, not just a desk officer. Captain James Rodriguez had boarded the train at the previous station, and Sarah had observed him during the brief stop. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of a professional warrior, but there was something else, a tension around his eyes that suggested he was dealing with more than routine travel stress. His right hand occasionally moved to touch a small metal case secured to his wrist by a titanium chain, a gesture so subtle that most passengers would never notice it. Sarah knew exactly what that case contained, though Captain Rodriguez had no idea she was aware of its significance. Intelligence reports had identified him as the courier for a classified military prototype, a new targeting system that represented a quantum leap in precision warfare technology. The device was being transported from a research facility in North Carolina to Pentagon officials in Washington for final approval before mass production. It was also the exact type of technology that the smuggling ring she was investigating would pay millions to acquire. As the train pulled away from the station and began building speed through the Virginia countryside, Sarah settled into her role as an unremarkable passenger. She opened a paperback novel and began reading, while her peripheral vision kept track of the other passengers and their movements. The Marine captain had produced a tablet and appeared to be reviewing official documents, occasionally making notes in a small leather-bound notebook. The first sign of trouble came 2 hours into the journey. Sarah noticed a subtle change in the behavior of 3 passengers who had seemed unconnected when they boarded. A middle-aged woman in a business suit, a young man wearing a college sweatshirt, and an elderly gentleman with a walking cane had begun making eye contact and exchanging almost imperceptible signals. To most observers, their interactions would appear coincidental, a polite nod here, a brief smile there, but Sarah recognized the careful choreography of a coordinated team. Her pulse quickened as she realized the implications. The smuggling operation she had been tracking wasn't just moving stolen equipment through civilian channels, they were actively targeting military couriers on public transportation. The 3 suspects were positioning themselves strategically throughout the car, creating a triangle of coverage that would allow them to monitor and potentially intercept Captain Rodriguez and his precious cargo. Sarah's mind raced through her options. She couldn't simply identify herself as a federal agent without potentially compromising months of undercover work. The investigation was too important to blow on a single intercept, especially when she still didn't know the full extent of the smuggling network. At the same time, she couldn't allow classified military technology to fall into the wrong hands. The train continued its steady rhythm through the pastoral Virginia landscape, but the atmosphere in Car 3 had subtly shifted. The three suspects were maintaining their cover while gradually tightening their surveillance net around the unsuspecting Marine captain. Sarah noticed that the young man in the college sweatshirt had moved to a seat that gave him a clear view of the captain's briefcase and the chained metal case. The elderly man with the cane had positioned himself near the car's rear exit, while the businesswoman had taken a seat that allowed her to monitor the forward exit. Captain Rodriguez seemed oblivious to the developing situation. He continued reviewing his documents with the focused attention of someone preparing for an important briefing. Occasionally he would glance out the window at the passing scenery or check his watch, but he showed no sign of awareness that he was being systematically observed by a team of professional operatives. Sarah found herself in an increasingly difficult position. Every instinct told her to act, to somehow warn the Marine captain of the danger he was facing. But her training and the importance of her long-term mission demanded that she maintain her cover and gather intelligence on the smuggling operations methods. She forced herself to continue reading her book while covertly observing the unfolding situation. The train made its scheduled stop in Richmond, and Sarah watched with growing tension as several new passengers boarded. Among them was a conductor she hadn't seen before, a man whose uniform seemed slightly ill-fitting and whose behavior struck her as subtly wrong. Real train conductors moved with practiced efficiency and familiarity with their environment. This man hesitated slightly before heading toward the crew car, as if uncertain of the layout. As the train resumed its journey toward Washington, Sarah realized that the situation was escalating beyond a simple theft operation. The arrival of the fake conductor suggested that the smuggling ring had infiltrated the railway system itself, possibly with inside help from legitimate employees. This was a level of sophistication that exceeded anything in her previous intelligence reports. The businesswoman stood up and moved toward the restroom, passing close to Captain Rodriguez's seat. As she did, Sarah saw her drop a small electronic device behind the captain's seat, likely a listening device or signal jammer that would interfere with any attempt to call for help. The captain didn't notice the planted device, his attention still focused on his official documents. Sarah's cover as a freelance journalist provided her with certain advantages. She had a legitimate reason to be observant and curious about her fellow passengers. More importantly, she carried recording equipment that could document the developing criminal conspiracy. She carefully activated a small digital recorder in her bag, knowing that any evidence she gathered could be crucial for prosecuting the smuggling ring. The young man in the college sweatshirt had been gradually moving closer to Captain Rodriguez, using the pretext of stretching his legs and visiting the snack car. Sarah realized that he was conducting a reconnaissance of the captain's security measures, noting how the metal case was secured and identifying potential vulnerabilities. His casual movements were actually a careful assessment of the target. As the train approached the halfway point of its journey, Sarah made a critical decision. She couldn't allow the operation to proceed without intervention, but she also couldn't afford to blow her cover completely. She needed to find a way to alert Captain Rodriguez to the danger while maintaining her ability to continue tracking the smuggling network. Rising from her seat with her book still in hand, Sarah made her way toward the snack car, deliberately timing her movement to intersect with the path of the young man in the college sweatshirt. As she passed Captain Rodriguez, she accidentally dropped her book directly beside his seat, the cover landing face up to reveal the title, Military Intelligence, A Historical Perspective. Captain Rodriguez glanced down at the fallen book, and, for just a moment, his eyes met Sarah's. In that brief contact, she saw a flicker of recognition, not of her personally, but of the calculated nature of her accident. Military officers were trained to be suspicious of coincidences, and something in his expression suggested that her message had been received. As Sarah retrieved her book and continued toward the snack car, she saw Captain Rodriguez's posture subtly change. His hand moved almost imperceptibly closer to the chain case, and his eyes began a careful survey of the other passengers. He was now alert to the possibility of a threat, though he didn't yet understand its full scope. The fake conductor had reappeared and was making his way through the car, ostensibly checking tickets but actually positioning himself for whatever operation the smuggling team was planning. Sarah realized that they were likely waiting for a specific moment, perhaps when the train entered a tunnel or passed through a remote area where cell phone signals would be unreliable. The tension in Car 3 continued to build as the train raced through the Virginia countryside toward its final destination. Sarah knew that the next few hours would determine not only the success of her long-term investigation but also whether critical military technology would fall into the hands of those who would use it against American interests. As she returned to her seat with a cup of coffee from the snack car, Sarah caught Captain Rodriguez watching her in the reflection of the window. Their eyes met again in the glass, and she saw that he was now fully alert to the developing situation. The question was whether they could work together to prevent the theft without compromising either his mission or hers. The train continued its relentless progress toward Washington, carrying its diverse cargo of passengers, secrets, and unfolding drama toward an uncertain conclusion. In the confined space of Car 3, two professionals from different agencies found themselves thrust into an unexpected alliance against a sophisticated enemy that threatened everything they had sworn to protect. Captain James Rodriguez had survived 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, and those experiences had taught him to trust his instincts above all else. The moment the young woman dropped her book beside his seat, every combat-honed sense in his body had gone on high alert. The title of the book wasn't a coincidence, and neither was the way she had made deliberate eye contact with him through the window's reflection. Rodriguez had been carrying classified cargo for the better part of 5 years, and he knew the protocols inside and out. More importantly, he knew the threats. The titanium chain case secured to his wrist contained not just any military technology, but a revolutionary targeting system that could change the balance of power in modern warfare. The prototype represented 2 years of development and testing, and its specifications were worth more than most people would see in a lifetime. As the train continued its steady rhythm through the rolling Virginia hills, Rodriguez began his own discreet assessment of the situation. His apparent focus on official documents was actually a cover for surveillance of his fellow passengers. What he saw confirmed his growing suspicions that something was seriously wrong. The elderly man with the walking cane had been reading the same page of his newspaper for over 20 minutes. The businesswoman who had passed by his seat earlier was now positioned where she could observe both exits from the car. Most telling of all, the young man in the college sweatshirt had been taking pictures with his phone, ostensibly selfies and landscape shots, but Rodriguez recognized photo reconnaissance when he saw it. The Marine captain's training included extensive instruction on surveillance detection and counter-surveillance techniques. He had learned to identify hostile observation through subtle behavioral patterns, and the 3 passengers who had seemed unremarkable when he boarded were now clearly revealed as a coordinated team. Their movements were too precise, their positioning too strategic to be coincidental. Rodriguez found himself in a complex tactical situation. His primary mission was to transport the classified prototype safely to the Pentagon, but he also had a responsibility to protect civilian passengers from any violence that might occur. The confined space of the train car provided limited options for evasive action, and he couldn't simply abandon his post to seek help from other authorities. The woman who had dropped the book represented an unknown variable in an already complicated equation. Her behavior suggested that she was aware of the threat and possibly trained in recognizing surveillance teams. The book title indicated either remarkable coincidence or deliberate communication. Her careful eye contact suggested the latter, which raised important questions about her identity and motivations. As Rodriguez continued his covert observation, he noticed additional concerning details. The fake conductor he had spotted earlier was now making his second pass through the car, and his movements were becoming increasingly focused on Rodriguez's seating area. The man's uniform might fool casual observers, but Rodriguez could see that his shoes were wrong, expensive leather loafers instead of the practical work boots that real conductors wore. The train was now entering a more remote section of the Virginia countryside, with dense forests on both sides of the tracks and no visible towns or highways. Rodriguez recognized this as exactly the type of location where a hostile team would attempt their operation. Isolated, limited communications, and minimal chance of immediate assistance from local law enforcement. Sarah Mitchell had returned to her seat and was again reading her book, but Rodriguez could see that her attention was actually focused on monitoring the same suspects he had identified. Her positioning gave her excellent observation angles, and her apparent casualness was too perfect to be natural. Everything about her behavior screamed professional training. The young man in the college sweatshirt stood up and began moving toward the restroom, but his path took him directly past Rodriguez's seat. As he passed, he stumbled slightly, catching himself on the armrest of Rodriguez's chair. The contact lasted less than 2 seconds, but Rodriguez felt the unmistakable pressure of someone testing the security of his briefcase and the chained metal case. That brief contact confirmed Rodriguez's worst fears. The team wasn't just conducting surveillance, they were preparing for an active operation to steal the classified prototype. The stumble had been cover for a hands-on assessment of his security measures, and the young man's practice technique suggested this wasn't his first such operation. Rodriguez's mind raced through his limited options. He carried a concealed sidearm, as authorized by his orders, but using it in the confined space of a passenger train would endanger innocent civilians. He could attempt to move to a different car, but that would expose him to ambush in the narrow connecting passages. His best option might be to somehow coordinate with the mysterious woman who had been signaling him. The businesswoman was now talking quietly on her cell phone, apparently having a routine conversation about a meeting in Washington. But Rodriguez noticed that she was speaking in a pattern of coded phrases that suggested operational communication. She mentioned delivery schedules and package handling in ways that seemed to have double meanings. As the train rounded a curve through a particularly dense section of forest, Rodriguez saw the elderly man with the walking cane begin to move. The man's previous frailty disappeared as he stood with the fluid motion of someone much younger and more athletic than his disguise suggested. His walking cane was being held in a way that suggested it might conceal a weapon. The fake conductor had positioned himself at the front of the car and was now blocking the forward exit. His hand rested casually on what appeared to be a radio, but Rodriguez suspected it was actually a signal device to coordinate the team's movements. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, and Rodriguez realized that the operation was about to commence. Sarah Mitchell had also recognized the changing dynamics in the car. Rodriguez saw her subtly shift position in her seat, and her right hand disappeared into her messenger bag. Her movements had the practiced efficiency of someone accessing equipment, and Rodriguez began to suspect that she might be law enforcement rather than a civilian journalist. The train's public address system crackled to life with an announcement about upcoming stations, but Rodriguez barely heard it. His attention was focused on the immediate tactical situation and the need to protect both the classified prototype and the innocent passengers who had no idea they were about to become involved in a federal crime. The young man emerged from the restroom and began walking back toward his seat, but Rodriguez noticed that he was now carrying a small black bag that he hadn't had before. The bag was the right size to contain specialized tools for bypassing security devices, and the way he carried it suggested significant weight, possibly electronic equipment or weapons. Rodriguez made a critical decision. He caught Sarah Mitchell's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly toward the approaching threat. Her response was immediate and professional. She gave a subtle hand signal that indicated she understood the situation and was prepared to act. The exchange confirmed his suspicion that she was some kind of federal agent or military operative. The elderly man with the walking cane had now positioned himself in the aisle directly beside Rodriguez's row. His disguise was beginning to slip as the operational phase approached, and Rodriguez could see the outline of body armor beneath his loose clothing. This wasn't a simple theft operation, it was a professional military-style raid. The businesswoman ended her phone call and stood up, ostensibly to retrieve something from the overhead luggage compartment. But her movement brought her to a position where she could observe Rodriguez's security measures while appearing to be engaged in routine passenger activity. The team was completing their final preparations for the assault. Rodriguez's training had prepared him for exactly this type of situation, but the civilian environment created complications that didn't exist in military operations. He couldn't simply neutralize threats without considering the safety of innocent passengers, including children and elderly travelers who had no part in this confrontation. The train was now deep in the forest, with no cell phone towers visible and no immediate access to outside assistance. The smuggling team had clearly chosen their timing carefully, waiting for maximum isolation before launching their operation. Rodriguez realized that he and the mysterious federal agent would have to handle this situation alone. Sarah Mitchell was now making subtle preparations of her own. Rodriguez could see that she had positioned various items within easy reach, and her body language suggested someone preparing for immediate action. Her professional composure confirmed his assessment that she was a trained operative, though he still didn't know which agency she represented. The fake conductor began moving toward Rodriguez's position, using the pretext of checking tickets to approach the target area. His movements were casual but purposeful, and Rodriguez could see that he was coordinating with the other team members through barely perceptible signals. As the train continued through the isolated Virginia countryside, Rodriguez found himself at the center of a developing crisis that would test every aspect of his military training. The classified prototype chained to his wrist represented years of American technological development and strategic advantage. Its loss would be more than a personal failure, it would be a national security disaster. The moment of truth was approaching, and Rodriguez knew that the next few minutes would determine not only his own survival but the fate of technology that could save countless American lives in future conflicts. He tightened his grip on his briefcase and prepared to defend his country's secrets with everything he had learned in 5 tours of combat duty. The train raced through the forest toward a confrontation that would transform a routine courier mission into a battle for the future of American military superiority. The attack began with the subtle efficiency of a well-rehearsed military operation. The fake conductor approached Captain Rodriguez with what appeared to be a routine ticket check, but his hands moved with the practiced precision of someone accessing concealed weapons. Sarah Mitchell saw the telltale bulge of a taser beneath his uniform jacket just as he reached Rodriguez's row. Rodriguez reacted with the lightning reflexes of a combat veteran. As the fake conductor reached for his weapon, the Marine captain's left hand shot out in a precise strike that disabled his attacker's weapon arm while his right hand maintained its protective grip on the chain case. The movement was so quick that most passengers didn't even realize violence had erupted in their midst. The elderly man with the walking cane dropped his pretense of frailty and moved with surprising speed toward the confrontation. Sarah saw him reaching into his coat for what was clearly a concealed firearm, and she knew the situation was about to escalate dramatically. Without hesitation, she launched herself from her seat, using her messenger bag to knock the weapon from his grasp before he could bring it to bear. The businesswoman immediately activated a small device that began emitting a high-pitched electronic whine, designed to interfere with cell phone communications and prevent passengers from calling for help. Her professional demeanor evaporated as she revealed herself to be a trained operative, moving with military precision toward a bag she had concealed in the overhead compartment. Rodriguez found himself grappling with the fake conductor in the narrow aisle between seats. The man was skilled in hand-to-hand combat, but Rodriguez's superior training and physical conditioning gave him the advantage. More importantly, his protective instincts were fully engaged. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival, but to protect classified technology that could save American lives. The young man in the college sweatshirt had produced a sophisticated electronic device designed to break the titanium chain securing the prototype case to Rodriguez's wrist. Sarah recognized the equipment as military-grade gear that wasn't available to ordinary criminals, confirming her suspicion that this was a state-sponsored operation rather than simple theft. Civilian passengers were beginning to realize that something serious was happening, and panic was starting to spread through the car. A mother gathered her 2 young children close to her, while an elderly couple huddled together in confusion and fear. Sarah knew that civilian casualties were now a serious concern, as the professional attackers would likely view witnesses as potential threats to their escape. Rodriguez managed to disable the fake conductor with a precisely applied chokehold, but the victory was temporary. The businessman woman had retrieved an advanced weapon from her concealed bag, not a firearm, but a military-grade tranquilizer gun designed to incapacitate targets without killing them. The smuggling team wanted Rodriguez alive so they could force him to provide access codes for the prototype. Sarah drew her own concealed weapon, a compact pistol that she carried as part of her federal agent credentials. But the presence of innocent civilians severely limited her options. Any gunfire in the confined space of the train car could easily result in casualties among passengers who had no part in this conflict. The electronic jamming device was now affecting more than just cell phones. The train's own communication systems were being disrupted, preventing the engineer from receiving any emergency signals from the passenger cars. The smuggling team had clearly planned for this contingency, isolating their target area from outside assistance while they completed their operation. Rodriguez found himself facing multiple attackers in a confined space while trying to protect both the classified prototype and innocent civilians. His military training had prepared him for combat, but not for this specific type of asymmetric warfare in a civilian environment. Every move he made had to consider the potential impact on nearby passengers. The young man with the electronic device was now attempting to approach Rodriguez from behind while he was engaged with the other attackers. Sarah saw the threat developing and moved to intercept, but her path was blocked by panicked passengers who were trying to flee toward the exits. The chaos was working in favor of the attackers by limiting the defenders' mobility. The businesswoman fired her tranquilizer gun, but Rodriguez's combat reflexes allowed him to dodge the dart, which instead struck the window behind him. The chemical agent spread a spider web of cracks across the reinforced glass, demonstrating the weapon's considerable power and the serious intent of the attackers. Sarah managed to reach the young man just as he activated his chain-cutting device. The tool was designed to slice through titanium cables using a high-energy plasma arc, technology that confirmed these weren't ordinary criminals but professionals with access to advanced military equipment. Her intervention disrupted his attack, but also revealed her own combat training to the remaining attackers. The elderly man had recovered his concealed firearm and was now taking aim at Rodriguez from across the car. The angle of his shot was blocked by civilian passengers, but Sarah realized he was willing to risk collateral damage to complete his mission. His finger was tightening on the trigger when she made a desperate decision. Rodriguez saw Sarah's movement and understood immediately what she intended to do. In a coordinated action that demonstrated remarkable tactical awareness, he dove toward the elderly gunman just as Sarah created a distraction by overturning a serving cart from the snack area. The combination of movements disrupted the gunman's aim and created cover for both defenders. The train was now entering a tunnel through a mountain ridge, plunging the car into darkness broken only by the emergency lighting. The changed environment gave both sides new tactical options, but also increased the danger to civilian passengers who could no longer clearly see the developing threats around them. Rodriguez used the darkness to his advantage, drawing on night fighting techniques learned in overseas combat zones. He moved with silent precision toward the businesswoman, who was reloading her tranquilizer gun while trying to maintain her position near the emergency equipment. His approach was undetected until he was close enough to disable her weapon. Sarah found herself engaged in close-quarters combat with the young man, whose college student disguise had given way to the fighting skills of a professional operative. His techniques suggested training in multiple martial arts disciplines, and his equipment indicated backing from a well-funded organization with military connections. The fake conductor had recovered consciousness and was attempting to reach the emergency brake controls, apparently intending to stop the train in the tunnel where accomplices might be waiting. Rodriguez realized that the operation was more complex than a simple theft. It was a coordinated extraction plan that involved multiple teams and extensive logistical support. Civilian passengers were now huddled together in whatever cover they could find, trying to stay clear of the violence while the train raced through the darkness of the tunnel. Sarah could hear children crying and adults trying to reassure each other, sounds that reinforced her determination to protect these innocent people from the consequences of international espionage. The electronic jamming device was creating additional problems by interfering with the train's own safety systems. Warning lights were flashing throughout the car, and Sarah could hear unusual sounds from the wheels that suggested the train's automated monitoring systems were being affected by the electronic interference. Rodriguez made a crucial tactical decision. Rather than continuing to fight defensively while protecting the prototype, he would take offensive action to end the threat. The confined space that had been limiting his options could also work to his advantage if he used it properly. He began moving systematically toward each attacker, using his superior combat training to neutralize them one by one. The businesswoman attempted to use civilian passengers as human shields, grabbing a terrified teenage girl and pressing the reloaded tranquilizer gun against her neck. Her action forced both Rodriguez and Sarah to halt their advance, giving the remaining attackers time to regroup and reassess their tactical situation. Sarah found herself facing an impossible choice between protecting innocent civilians and preventing the theft of classified military technology. The smuggling team had clearly anticipated this dilemma and was using humanitarian concerns as a weapon against the defenders. Her federal agent training had included scenarios like this, but the reality was far more complex than any simulation. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, keeping the train in darkness while the crisis continued to unfold in Car 3. Rodriguez could see faint light beginning to appear in the distance, indicating that they would soon emerge into daylight where the tactical situation might change again. He knew that the next few minutes would be critical in determining the outcome of this confrontation. The young man had managed to position himself near Rodriguez's briefcase while the Marine captain was focused on protecting the civilian hostage. His chain-cutting device was recharged and ready to use, requiring only a few seconds of access to the titanium cable to complete the theft of the classified prototype. As the train began to emerge from the tunnel, Sarah saw her opportunity. The changing light conditions would temporarily disorient everyone in the car, giving her a brief window to act. She prepared herself for a coordinated assault that would either end the crisis or escalate it to a level that could endanger everyone aboard the train. The fate of cutting-edge military technology, innocent civilian lives, and 2 federal careers hung in the balance as the train raced toward daylight and the climactic confrontation that would determine the outcome of this high-stakes battle aboard a seemingly ordinary passenger train. As the train burst from the tunnel into brilliant Virginia sunlight, Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would define the rest of his military career. The teenage girl held hostage by the businesswoman was trembling with terror, her wide eyes fixed on the tranquilizer gun pressed against her throat. In that moment, Rodriguez saw not a tactical problem to be solved, but someone's daughter who deserved to go home safely to her family. Without breaking eye contact with the armed woman, Rodriguez slowly reached for his sidearm with his left hand while keeping his right hand protectively over the chain case. His movement was deliberate and visible, designed to draw the attacker's attention away from Sarah Mitchell, who was positioning herself for a coordinated strike. Sarah understood Rodriguez's strategy immediately. His apparent surrender was actually cover for her to act, and she moved with the precision of someone who had trained for exactly this type of high-stakes operation. The moment the businesswoman's attention focused on Rodriguez's weapon, Sarah struck with lethal efficiency, disabling the tranquilizer gun and freeing the hostage in one fluid motion. The young man with the chain-cutting device saw his opportunity disappearing and made a desperate lunge for the prototype case. Rodriguez was ready for him, using his superior reach and combat experience to intercept the attack while simultaneously protecting the terrified civilian passengers who were caught in the crossfire. The elderly man had been quietly maneuvering toward the emergency brake controls, apparently intending to stop the train at a predetermined location where additional operatives were waiting. Sarah spotted his movement and realized that the smuggling operation involved more than just the team aboard the train. This was a coordinated extraction plan with multiple contingencies and backup personnel. Rodriguez's tactical assessment proved correct as he systematically neutralized each attacker using the minimum force necessary to protect civilian lives. His years of combat experience in urban environments had taught him to differentiate between eliminating threats and minimizing collateral damage. Each movement was calculated to end the crisis without unnecessary violence. The fake conductor made a final desperate attempt to complete the mission by pulling what appeared to be a dead man's switch, a device designed to trigger some kind of failsafe if the operation failed. Sarah recognized the threat immediately and tackled him before he could activate whatever contingency plan the smuggling team had prepared. As the immediate violence ended, Rodriguez found himself holding his service weapon while surveying a train car filled with traumatized civilian passengers and disabled attackers. The prototype case was still secure, but he knew that this incident was far from over. The sophistication of the operation suggested state-sponsored espionage rather than ordinary criminal activity. Sarah revealed her federal credentials to Rodriguez, confirming his suspicions about her identity while explaining that she had been tracking this smuggling network for over a year. The train attack was exactly the kind of operation her investigation had been designed to prevent, and the evidence they had gathered would be crucial for identifying the larger conspiracy. The electronic jamming device was still active, preventing communication with the outside world and potentially affecting the train's safety systems. Rodriguez and Sarah worked together to locate and disable the equipment, restoring normal communications just as the train was approaching the next scheduled station. Emergency procedures kicked into action as soon as the train's crew regained communication capability. Federal agents and military security personnel were waiting at the station, having been alerted by the train's delayed check-in and unusual electronic signatures detected by monitoring systems. The response demonstrated the multiple layers of security protecting classified military transportation. The 4 captured operatives proved to be foreign intelligence agents operating under deep cover identities that had taken years to establish. Their professional equipment and sophisticated planning revealed a conspiracy that extended far beyond simple theft, involving the systematic targeting of American military technology by hostile foreign powers. Sarah's undercover investigation had provided crucial intelligence about the smuggling network's methods and personnel, but the train incident revealed capabilities that exceeded what she had previously documented. The coordination between the team aboard the train and outside support personnel suggested an organization with extensive resources and long-term strategic planning. Rodriguez's successful defense of the classified prototype earned him commendation from the highest levels of military command, but he was more proud of the fact that no civilian passengers had been seriously injured during the confrontation. His decision to prioritize human life over mission security had actually enhanced both outcomes. The teenage girl who had been taken hostage was reunited with her family and provided with counseling support to help her process the traumatic experience. Other passengers were also offered assistance, and several later testified that Rodriguez and Sarah's professional handling of the crisis had prevented a much worse outcome. Investigation of the captured operatives revealed a sophisticated intelligence network that had been targeting American military research facilities, transportation systems, and personnel for several years. The train incident was just one operation in a broader campaign to steal cutting-edge technology that would give foreign powers significant military advantages. Sarah's cover identity as a freelance journalist was maintained, allowing her to continue her investigation into other aspects of the smuggling network. The intelligence gathered from the train incident provided new leads that would keep her busy for months as she worked to identify and neutralize other cells of foreign operatives. The prototype targeting system was successfully delivered to Pentagon officials, where final testing confirmed its revolutionary capabilities. The technology would eventually be deployed to protect American forces and allies worldwide, saving countless lives through its superior precision and reduced collateral damage in combat situations. Rodriguez returned to his regular duties with a new appreciation for the threats facing military personnel even during routine transportation of classified materials. His experience led to improved security protocols that would better protect future courier missions from similar attacks. The partnership between Rodriguez and Sarah during the crisis led to enhanced cooperation between military security and federal law enforcement agencies. Their successful coordination under extreme pressure became a model for joint operations involving the protection of classified materials in civilian environments. The train incident became a classified case study used to train both military and civilian personnel in recognizing and responding to sophisticated espionage operations. The professionalism displayed by both defenders was held up as an example of how proper training and quick thinking could overcome seemingly impossible odds. Months later, Sarah's continued investigation led to the identification and arrest of 17 additional foreign operatives working in the United States. The network had been planning multiple simultaneous attacks on American military technology, and the intelligence gathered from the train incident proved crucial in preventing those operations. Rodriguez was promoted to major and given additional responsibilities for developing security protocols for military technology transportation. His first-hand experience with the realities of espionage threats made him an invaluable asset in protecting America's technological advantages from foreign intelligence services. The classified prototype that Rodriguez had protected was eventually deployed to combat units worldwide, where its advanced capabilities saved numerous civilian lives through more precise targeting and reduced collateral damage. The technology represented a significant advancement in America's ability to project military power while minimizing humanitarian costs. Sarah received recognition for her role in protecting the classified technology, though the nature of her undercover work meant that her contributions remained largely unknown to the public. Her continued investigation of foreign espionage networks became one of the federal government's highest priority counterintelligence operations. The train itself was modified with enhanced security systems designed to detect and prevent similar attacks in the future. The lessons learned from the incident led to improved protection for all forms of civilian transportation that might be targeted by foreign intelligence operatives. The 4 captured operatives were eventually exchanged for American intelligence personnel who had been captured overseas, but not before extensive interrogation revealed valuable information about foreign intelligence capabilities and objectives. Their capture disrupted multiple ongoing operations against American interests. Years later, both Rodriguez and Sarah would look back on their chance encounter aboard the train as a defining moment in their careers. The crisis had tested every aspect of their training and character, proving that ordinary seeming situations could suddenly become matters of national security requiring extraordinary responses. The incident demonstrated that the battle for military technological superiority was not confined to traditional battlefields, but could erupt anywhere American personnel carried classified materials. The vigilance and professionalism of individuals like Rodriguez and Sarah remained the most important defense against those who would steal America's secrets. The train continued its journey to Washington carrying its remaining passengers, who gradually returned to their normal conversations and activities. For them, the incident would become an extraordinary story to share with friends and family. For Rodriguez and Sarah, it was simply another day in service to their country, protecting the freedoms and security that others took for granted. The classified targeting system eventually proved its worth in conflicts around the world, where its precision capabilities prevented countless civilian casualties while enabling American forces to achieve their objectives with minimal collateral damage. The technology that Rodriguez had risked his life to protect became a cornerstone of America's ability to project military power responsibly and effectively. In the end, the incident aboard the train represented both the constant threats facing American national security and the dedication of the men and women who stand ready to defend their country's interests wherever and whenever duty calls. Their success ensured that America's technological advantages would continue to protect freedom and democracy around the world.